Welcome to the Chapter 8, Section 1 podcast. And this podcast is on energy and life. The Chapter 8 is on photosynthesis. So let's start off. We're going to be talking about energy. And as we know, all living things need energy to survive. And we get our energy from food, but the energy in most food comes from the sun. And we're going to find out more about how that happens. So where do plants get the energy they need to produce food? Plants and other types of organisms are able to use light energy from the sun to produce their own food. Two types of organisms. There are autotrophs and those who make their own food. And you can see a plant undergoing photosynthesis here. It's going to make its own food. And then there are the heterotrophs. Then these animals obtain their energy from foods that they consume. We are autotrophs, as are lions and prairie dogs and mushrooms. Mushrooms decompose, so they are also a heterotroph. Now this handy little molecule is ATP, and it's one of the forms of energy that can be stored in a chemical compound. And ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate, and we abbreviate it as ATP, and it can store and release energy. It's used by all types of cells as the basic energy source. This is a very, very important molecule. It's way up there in the list of important molecules. It consists of adenine, a ribose. We know ribose is a 5-carbon sugar. And lastly, 3 phosphate groups. 1, 2, 3. So adenine, we're familiar with. Maybe familiar with that. Ribose, maybe familiar with that too. And then 3 phosphate groups. So where the energy stored is in the 3 phosphate groups. That's the key to it. ADP, which is a very similar compound, only has 2 phosphate groups. And here's the key. The cell can store the energy by adding a phosphate group to ADP. In other words, go from ADP to ATP. And the analogy here is that ADP is a partially charged battery. If you add the ATP, now you're a fully charged battery. So the way you release the energy is by breaking the bond right here between the 2nd and 3rd phosphate groups. When that's done, the phosphate group is released and energy is released, as you could see. So what's the role of ATP in cellular activities? It is used for many cellular activities, including transport across the cell membranes, making proteins, protein synthesis, muscle contraction. So it is very useful for this because it's very basic. It can store energy, and you can get the energy very quickly. And this is something to remember. Most cells only have a small amount of ATP because it's not a good way to store large amounts of energy. And we know we've seen energy stored in carbohydrates and also in lipids. And cells regenerate the ATP from ADP when they get food like glucose. And that helps them go from ADP to ATP.